Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Conservation in the Classroom, where you get to connect with one of WWF's very own experts or scientists. We're so happy that you're here. My name is Kate, and I will be your host of today's event. Our event today is called Protecting the Scaly and Slithery, and it is going to be all about reptiles, which you may have guessed from after having seen that trivia question that we just had on our screen there. So joining us is reptile expert and member of WWF's Wildlife Conservation Team, Arnaud Lyet. Arnaud, we are so happy to have you here. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So before I pass things over to Arnaud officially, we obviously need to say hi to our special guest that we have joining us on camera today. So let's bring in our special guest. And when you all hear your name, make sure you wave and say hi to everyone watching. So first up, we have our group from Roosevelt, New York. Let's bring them in. Hi, Roosevelt Children's Academy. Looking good. Okay, next up, joining us from Springfield, Oregon, is Miss Lamar's fourth graders. Okay, and joining us from Perry, Kansas, we have the Perry Lecompton Middle School. Great, and last but certainly not least, we have Mrs. Davis's class at Hidden Cove Academy. All right, well, we are very excited to have you all joining us. I'm sure you have a lot of very interesting questions to ask Arnaud, so we look forward to checking in with you when his presentation is over. Just a quick reminder, everyone watching from the web page, make sure to use that Google form that you see to place any questions that you have during the presentation, so we can try to get as many of them answered as we can. So without further ado, I am going to pass things over to Arnaud to teach us a little bit more about the scaly and the slithery. Arnaud, you can take it from here.
Okay. So let me share my screen and let me know when you can see it. So good?
Yeah? We can see it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Hello, everyone. So my name is Arnaud Lyet, and I'm a quantitative wildlife ecologist at World Wildlife Fund. So why quantitative? It's simply because most of my work with wildlife has to do with numbers. If I had to summarize what I do, I would say that I count rare animals. So how did I get there? I'm not completely sure, but I have this memory when I was 5 years old. I was walking along the canal with my uncle when he shouted that he saw a crocodile. And I was so excited because I had never seen a crocodile, but I did not see it. And I was so disappointed that I remember that moment after 40 years. So many years later, I learned that actually my uncle was joking that day. There is no crocodile where I grew up, but it does not really matter because what I thought I had missed that day taught me a really good lesson. If you want to see wild animal, big or small, pay attention around you with all your senses. Now, I have recovered from my great disappointments, and I've seen many rare animals since that day, including a few of these fellow reptiles. Here, I started small, got a little bit bigger with the Orinoco crocodile, and here we're marking and releasing a Nile crocodile in Namibia. And there it goes. But what is exactly a reptile? So scientists love to group animals into categories based on characteristics these animals share with each other. On this diagram from left to right, you can see 8 groups with fish, amphibians, mammals, birds, and the 4 last ones are crocodiles, turtles, lizards, and snakes. So these 4 groups in green all belong to the reptile category. Reptiles have been on Earth for more than 3 million years. So let's look a little bit closer and see what these animals have in common that we decided to put them all together. Here I'm giving you 3 characteristics that all reptiles share, and maybe in your class you have found other characteristics that will help you go through the quiz a little bit later. So first, all reptiles have a backbone, this long linear bone structure in the middle of the back between the skull and the tail. Second, their body is entirely covered with scales. And third, reptiles are often called cold-blooded, but this doesn't mean that their blood is always cold, but that animals need to adjust their behavior to keep their body temperature in a range that is safe for them. And this is why, for example, turtles are often seen basking in the sun, or why you can't see snake in the middle of the winter where the temperature is too low. Now that you have these keys to help you decide, let's go through a few examples and test our knowledge of classification. So here is our first candidate. So it has no backbone, no scale. Oh yes, it does have a backbone. Sorry about that. It has no scale, and it's cold-blooded. And I'm pretty sure all of you have guessed that this is not a reptile, and indeed, it's a tree frog. Next one. It has obviously no backbone, has no scale, but is cold-blooded. And again, I'm pretty sure all of you have recognized the hornet, which is an insect and not a reptile. This one seemed to have a backbone, seemed to have scale, cold-blooded, and do qualify as a reptile. And more specifically, this is a sphenodon that can only be found in some islands in New Zealand. Now, how about this last example? So let's go through the checklist together. You have backbone check, scale check, and cold-blooded check. Wait, but that's not a reptile, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows what it is. So maybe we need something else here. And correct, does it have lungs? No. And because that's a fish, and most fish don't have lungs. So now that you know what reptiles are, let's see where they live. So this map shows the diversity of reptiles with red colors associated with more species. And you can see that many more species live in the warmer places of the globe around the equator. And that there is no reptile or very few near the South and North Pole. And also notice on the left right corner, the very high diversity of turtles in North America. So in the US, there are 295 species of reptiles, with the largest diversity that is found in the southwestern states. And if you live there, you might have come across some of the species that you can see on the screen. The venomous copperhead on the upper left corner, the non-venomous, diamondback water snake, the cone snake, or one of the two lizards here. Moving northeast, you could find a few turtles, like the terrapin on the upper left corner, that is quite common in ponds and lakes near the seashore. The box turtle that can completely retract its head inside the shell and close it with a ventral scale. The garter snake, milk snake are amongst the most common species in this region. In the northern central region, maybe you got the chance, like me, to see a prairie rattlesnake sunbathing at the entrance of a prairie dog burrow. Other common species in this region include the gopher snake, ringneck snake, and the North American racer. For people in Oregon, opportunities to see reptile are less common, and I believe all species present in the region are here on the screen. That includes the gopher snake, garter snake, western fence lizards, and the western pond turtle. So more than 11,000 species of reptile have been described today. This is similar to the birds and twice the number of mammals. But despite their importance, they are much less studied. And it's believed that 20% of them are threatened and need protection. So how can we protect them? To illustrate what it takes to protect a snake, let me take you to the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, where I studied for 15 years one of the most threatened European snake, the Orsinis viper, here on this beautiful picture. First thing first, you need to understand whether the species needs protection or not. And the only way to do that is to gather the right amount of information about the species and its environment. But even before you start, you need to know what you're looking for so you can find it. You can tell apart snake species by looking at a few characteristics, like the shape of the eye, the shape of the snout, the head, how scales feel, if they feel rugged or smooth to the touch, the shape, length, color, and pattern of the body. But be careful, because sometimes the variation of color and patterns, even within the same species, makes it very difficult to recognize. And in such situations, scientists rely on very technical criteria, such as the number of scales on the belly, for instance. Once you know what it looks like, where to go look for it, you need to have an idea where to look for it. Here is a typical mountain grasslands where this species can be found. But even with that information, snakes are really hard to find. And knowing when it is most likely to be active will help you a lot. On this chart, you can see that the snake is only active from April to October. And also you notice that females are giving birth to 3 to 6 young snakes in the late summer. So you know there will be many more snakes for you to find late in September. So if I had to choose, I would go at that season. And now remember that the animals will certainly see and hear you long before you do. And most of the time, they will either retreat in their shelter without noise or stay still, almost invisible, the color of the body blending with the vegetation on the ground. A little bit just like here on this photo that I took a long time ago in the mountain. So can you see the snake on this picture? I will give you a few seconds to try. And afterwards, you give me how many people will have seen it. So let's go. Here it is. Exactly, really well hidden, right? So let's try a little bit easier. So there's another snake on this picture. I give you another few seconds. Here. So this one is not as well hidden as the previous one, because sometimes animals are a little too confident in their invisibility power and forget to hide or escape for a moment. And that's when you can see them best. So looking for a snake in the mountain is a lot like finding needles in a haystack. And this describes, well, what I did for 15 years with my teams and with many volunteers. We searched almost every mountain in the southern French Alps. After so many years, we believed we had a good idea of the distribution of the viper in France. But we also noticed that the snake could not be found in many places where it used to be present in the past and probably had gone extinct. Knowing the past and current distribution of a species is key to measure changes and to understand what causes these changes. And only after you recognize there is a problem, understand what causes it, can you act and try your best to solve it. In the case of the Orsini viper, we discovered that its favorite habitat was the grasslands above the tree line, where harsh physical and climatic conditions prevent trees from growing. But as global temperatures are warming, this ecosystem is disappearing, progressively replaced by forests and shrublands that are less favorable to the snakes and other animals that rely on these open lands to thrive. These changes of vegetation cause a reduction in the abundance of the snake's favorite food, the grasshoppers, and also bring new predators like this snake-eating eagle, or competitors that can reduce the ability of the viper to survive. Also in this region, people depend on the good quality of grasslands to feed their sheep. And the methods used to slow down the progression of shrubs and forests can hurt the snakes themselves, the grasshoppers they feed on, and the small bushes they use as shelter. On these slopes that you see on this picture, I caught and marked thousands of snakes to understand the impact of fire on the population. And using that information, I proposed some new technique to mitigate the impact of fire. I worked with the local authorities and farmers to rehabilitate a more traditional practice that consists in burning the vegetation while the soil is still covered with snow. I also worked with the forest department to conduct selective forest cutting to restore grasslands in critical areas where the snake had become very rare. And with the appropriate management team in place, also locally known as sheep and goats, the restored grasslands can support healthy populations of Orsini vipers, along with many other species that depend on the same habitats. Like many other reptiles in the world, European vipers are illegally harvested in the wild and sold as pets. To prevent this, we organized with the National Wildlife Rangers surveillance and education campaign on the busiest station like here, on a station called the Mont Ventoux. Maybe you have heard of it. So what can you do to help protect snakes, lizards, turtles where you live? Well, first, you can learn to identify them. There are many books available to do that, but you can also start by using this app that is called Seek if you have a phone. The app will probably not identify all the species you're taking picture of, especially if you're not close enough to get a good picture. But you can always share your observation on this photo on a network that is called iNaturalist, where lots of nature enthusiasts will help you identify the animal on your photo and will keep a track of the location where you have made this observation. Reporting observations on iNaturalist or to local reptiles protection groups will help gain knowledge on the distribution of these poorly known animals. And like I mentioned earlier, this information is the first and most important step for protecting reptiles. And finally, reptiles, especially venomous snakes, can be scary sometimes, but don't kill them. They help control populations of mice and rats and some disease they carry. They also are a source of food for lots of other animals. And the snake venom is used in medicine to treat heart disease or diabetes, for instance. And maybe lots of you have a cat, and it's a good idea to keep the cat inside. They are really very skilled predators that kill every year large numbers of birds and reptiles. So with that information, I'm done, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Arnaud. We are going to get started with the question and answer part of the program now. So get your questions ready, everybody. Just a reminder to those of you watching from the webpage, make sure to enter your questions into that form so that we can collect them and ask as many as we can to Arnaud. So we're going to start with our special guest that we have joining us on camera. So we'll start with our group from Roosevelt Children's Academy. Y'all are up first, so remember when you ask your question to be nice and loud and speak right into the microphone for it.
All right. Jameer, go. Taylor, question, come on. Yeah, you're up.
How do snakes survive in like the desert without like draining?
It's hot.
How do they survive in the desert without water?
Yes.
This is a very good question. There are not that many reptiles in the desert, but they are well adapted to like hide during the warmest temperature during the day. For instance, some species like dig in the ground, they only come out during the night. So I'm not completely sure how they manage exactly to survive, but I believe this is the same way they survive in cold places, by adapting their behavior to the local condition and making sure that they keep their temperature at the right level. So by hiding and coming out from their shelter at the right time is mostly the way they do that.
That was a great question to kick things off here. Let's bring in our group from Riverbend Elementary in Oregon. Y'all are up next. Nice.
Okay.
In the world, what's the most endangered reptiles in the whole world?
Oh, what is the most endangered one? Another tricky question. I wasn't aware there would be so many tricky questions on this group. I'm not sure. You have these very, very small populations like the sphenodon that are on the islands of New Zealand, because those are islands. They're very, very fragile environments. And if an island disappears, then, or like is hit by a hurricane or whatever, that wipes out the entire species. So the smallest population are really the most endangered. So you have a few of these that are really, really fragile. I'm thinking also of some populations of lizards in on Mediterranean islands. So the most fragile ones are the ones on islands, because the number are very low. But I don't have a rank that tells me. I don't have that in mind.
Another tricky question. They're stumping you today, Arnaud. Okay, next up is our group from Perry, Kansas, the Perry Lecompton Middle School. Nice and loud for us.
Okay, Alyssa, get in front so I can see you.
Are the only slithery animals snakes and legless lizards?
Okay, if those are the only slithery animals, I'm. There's been 3 questions that are hard to answer. So let me think a little bit about it. You have some fish that are probably slithery as well. The eels are, they could be described as slithery. Can they? Kate, help me here.
Maybe worms?
Oh yeah, worms too. That's correct.
You could describe it slithery.
I'm sorry.
But I guess when it comes to reptiles, snakes would be the main slithery ones, right?
Yeah.
Yes. That's what comes in mind.
That's what comes to mind. Okay.
But you have that's a good exercise. Try to find in your class which one are the other one that are slithery, and we'll try to agree or not.
There you go. It's a follow-up challenge for everybody to find another slithery animal. Okay, Mrs. Davis's class at Hidden Cove STEAM. If you are ready, nice and loud for us here.
Hi, my name is Optimus, and I
I like to explore the field behind our school, and we found these jawbones yesterday. Where do you like to explore?
Wait, can you say that again? What is the last? What is?
Where do you like to explore?
Where do you like to explore?
Where do I like to explore? I like to explore. I like to explore the park that is near my home. That has a few amphibians. There's a lot of small stream with, but those are not reptiles. But there are these, these little frogs and toads. So I like to go there, and sometimes I find a snake or two. So I like to go in the park near mine. But before that, when I was in France, I had a grassland just behind my house, and I used to know all the snakes that lived in this place. So I would go earlier, and I knew where they were hiding, so I could wait next to the shelter and wait until the snake would come out. And they were pretty big snake, like 2 meters long, 6 inches, 6 feet long.
Sorry about that. My computer is frozen. So when you find a snake like that, Arnaud, in like the area behind where you were living, what do you do?
That was just to take photos, make observations, try to be as invisible as possible so I would not disturb its behavior. It's always a challenge with these animals to be able to observe them, because they see us as predators, as a threat. So they try to escape or try to bite if we try to catch them. So it's really trying to be as invisible as possible to make the best observation. That's a big rule for any observation of wildlife. Not making noise, staying small, and trying to see their behavior as natural as possible.
So would it be safe to say that they are more like more nervous than we are? They're more nervous to see us than we are to see them?
Yes, they're always more nervous. And that's one of the main reasons why they bite, is when people try to either kill them or catch them to put them in another place. If they're not, if you don't try to touch them or bother them, just ignore them, they usually really feel comfortable with their camouflage, and they will not move, or they just will wait for people to pass and then and retreat or do their own business. There's no, apart from, there's no snake that are like voluntarily attacking human for no reason.
That's good to know. We're going to go ahead and ask a few questions that were submitted from the webpage. So while we're doing that, our on-camera classes can go ahead and think about what their next question will be in our next round. So we had a question submitted here from Wendy in Davis, California, that was curious if the reptile scales are in any certain pattern.
The way they are arranged on the body, they're very different from like between snakes and lizards. The snakes, they are covering like the tile on a roof. They're covering. But if you had a chance to get a snake in your hands and look in between those scale, you could see the skin. There is a skin that is underneath the scale. So they are arranged differently depending on the species. And also, I heard earlier I saw on the diagram before the presentation, some people defining those reptiles are rugus. And some snake have like very smooth scales, and when you touch it, it feels really, really smooth, while others have this little edge that makes them very rugged, and they use that to actually make noise. Some species are like scratching their scales together and like make this noise to scare predators or to scare potential threats.
Interesting. I would have never known that snakes can use their scales that way. Another question here is from Melissa in Pawling, New York, that's wondering if you have ever been bitten, and do you have to be very careful with reptiles handling them?
Yes, I've been bitten like 5 times, I think. And so I really recommend against handling animals. This is not safe for them, and it's not safe for you. And so it's only for scientific purpose. And so there's something very interesting here about the venom. Snakes like the one I studied is really specialized. His diet is really insects. And the venom, there is some evolution of the venom to be very effective to kill some the prey it feeds on, but is not effective against other animals like mammals, for instance. So even if I got bitten, and we have a scientific paper published on that, describing all the bites, that was not too painful. But some are very dangerous and can kill. Some species are really dangerous.
So again, that reminds us to leave the handling to the professionals here. Okay, if we are ready for our second round of questions, we'll go in the same order. So we'll start with Roosevelt Children's Academy in New York.
What's the most venomous?
Wait. Can't hear him.
What's the most venomous reptile ever?
The most venomous reptile ever. That's an easier question, but thank you very much for asking. It's said that the marine snakes, like it's called Trichorae, the one that live in the Pacific Ocean and all around Australia and Indonesia, all these islands, they have like many species of marine snakes, and those have the venom that are the most powerful of all the reptiles.
Because I thought it was like some golden snake in Brazil.
No, but they can still kill. In Brazil, they have a lot of they have like death every year. It's by species that is called Botrops. It's it's very similar to some species that you have in the United States. The copperhead, it's the same family, the same kind of snake.
That was a good question. Okay, our group from Riverbend Elementary in Oregon, you are up next. What's your next question for Arnaud?
What is the most venomous reptile you have messed with?
In the United States?
Yes.
I believe so. It's hard to say, but so you have a few venomous snake in the United States. You have the copperhead. You have many different kind of rattlesnakes. I haven't tested them all, so I don't know which one is more potent or more dangerous. And you also have the coral snake, and I would say that the coral snake is probably the most dangerous one. But you have to also take into account the behavior. Even if the venom is more dangerous, bites might not happen as often because the snake is more quiet and is not as aggressive as other species. So you probably have more bites from copperheads or rattlesnake than from coral snakes. And the coral snake has a pretty small mouth that doesn't allow to bite as easily as the copperhead or the rattlesnakes.
Okay, let's hear from our group in Kansas. Perry Lecompton, you are up next.
Okay, are we good?
Yes.
Okay. What is your favorite reptile and why?
Do I need to have one?
Um,
Can I love them all?
yeah, you can love them all. I would not blame you.
Let me think just a little bit. I love there's one actually that I think is the most incredible one is probably the Gabon viper, or some of the vipers that live in the forest of Central Africa, that have colors that are just completely amazing, and they can completely like bind with their environment. It's almost impossible to see them, and they're really big. It looks like a big sausage, super colorful big sausage, and and they're really massive and so beautiful. I think the head is the size of, yeah, I don't know how to say it, but it's huge. Yeah, that would be my favorite one.
That's another homework assignment, is for them to look up your favorite snake, to find pictures of it. Who knew that would be like one of the hardest questions they ask you, Arnaud, is to pick a favorite. Okay, Hidden Cove. If you are ready, you are next. Nice and loud.
Hi, my name is Sophia. I just lost my first tooth. When an alligator lose a tooth, does it grow back?
Hi, thank you for your question. That's a good question, and I don't think that alligator teeth grow back, but that would need to be checked. But I know that shark have their teeth that grow all the time, and snakes actually do have teeth that grow back. When you have for instance, the like those specialized teeth that you can find on the copperhead and the rattlesnake. So the fangs that inject the venom, those teeth grow back. On crocodile, I would say no, but I might be wrong. I hope I am not. I will need to double check. Thank you very much for the question.
That was a great question. Okay, I'm just doing a time check here. We have about 5 minutes left, so we're going to try to do a really quick last speed round of questions. I'm going to ask one or two more that were submitted from the webpage, and then we'll go through our on-camera guests one last time. I'm going to combine two of the questions here, Arnaud, because they're a bit similar. We had Miss Gina in Omaha, Nebraska, want to know if reptiles were related to dinosaurs, and kind of related to that question, Yen in Toronto was asking if snakes really did have legs before.
Okay, so indeed, reptiles are in the same group. The dinosaurs were one of these branches that went extinct, and actually so if we don't have back the presentation, but if you remember the birds and there was crocodiles and turtles that were close to each other. Actually, dinosaurs were part of the group of birds, and so birds were ancient dinosaurs that evolved toward this group, and dinosaurs become extinct. And that takes me to this other interesting point, that is that actually birds are reptiles. They are called, so the modern classification defines non-avian reptiles and avian reptiles. And so that was a very good question. And was there a last part of the question?
About if snakes used to have legs.
Oh yeah, and the legs. So, and yeah, there are some species of python that do have these little spur that are close to the tail, where the backbone connects to the tail, and those are vestigial legs. So they have disappeared in most species, but some of them still have these remaining organs that show that they did have legs a long time ago.
Okay, we're gonna have to make this last round really quick, but I do want to give our on-camera guests one last chance to come on and ask a question. So if we can have all of our groups be nice and ready with their last and final question, try to squeeze this in the last few minutes. So let's bring in Roosevelt one more time.
If you get bit by a snake, is the only antidote the snake's venom?
If can you repeat? Sorry.
What is the antidote?
If you get bit by a snake, is the only antidote the snake's venom?
The antidote is you don't always need an antidote, but there are medicine, and you have antidote that is target one species, and you have other antidotes that cover a larger range of species. So it really depends. And but otherwise there are some medicine like to make sure that your cardiac, your heart is still going. So you can also use some other medicine than the antidote that is against the venom of the snake you were bitten by.
Okay, let's head over to Riverbend Elementary in Oregon. Your last question.
What current risk are reptiles out of climate change, and how could we stop these actions that are harming them?
How can you repeat that, please?
Make your mask off so you can say.
What current risk are reptiles at with climate change, and how would we stop these actions that are harming them?
So how climate change is affecting those species? Climate change is basically changing the entire environment. It's causing, for instance, I mentioned the islands where snakes live. Those islands are like threatened by sea level rise. So those reptiles might just go extinct because they don't have islands anymore. Also, for instance, snakes, I mentioned that they need those conditions. They're adapted to certain condition, and for instance, the one that I studied is pushed towards the mountain, and soon will not have habitat anymore. So the thing we can do, and like this movement of animals really is a problem for adaptation to climate change. And what we can do is reduce our consumption and our emission of carbon in the atmosphere to give them more time to adapt. And there's a lot to be done with the way we build road. That's the same for mammals that need to cross road. Snakes cannot cross roads. They get flattened very often when they do that. So making sure that we have infrastructure that allow animal movement is something that we need to think about.
What a great question. Okay, Perry LeCompton,
Who can I ask?
You are up.
Hi. What is so special about reptiles?
They're cool. They're beautiful. They're all, and so one of the reasons I think what makes them so special to me is that they are much easier to observe than many other animals. And it's really something that is accessible even when you're like a young child. You can really do that with no equipment, you don't need binoculars, you just need to go out and look for them. And so that's what very particular about them is that they're accessible and they're beautiful.
Okay, our last group here, Mrs. Davis's class in San Antonio. Your last question.
Go ahead.
What animals have you found in the wild with the best camouflage?
Oh, right. The best camouflage is the one that you have never found. And though there's so many of them. And I think the ones I mentioned, so these vipers that live in tropical forest, it's very, very common for people to step right next to them or on their body. There's one that I'm thinking about. It's called the Bushmaster in South America. It's the largest viper in South America. It's almost 10 feet long, and it's very big, but it's very, very quiet because it's like blending in the leaves. And that's the one that's probably the one I found that had the best camouflage.
What a great question to wrap things up. So we are unfortunately out of time. So I just want to thank Arnaud for being here with us today and teaching us about reptiles. Just a quick reminder, teachers, parents, if you're interested, you can find a material packet on our website that's all about reptiles and has fun Kahoot games and a worksheet that you can do that kind of goes along with Arnaud's presentation. We're going to bring all of our classes back on camera one more time to say goodbye. Thanks so much for being here.